This week, the massive Arrowverse crossover Crisis on Infinite Earths came to a close, so today I'm going to stop and rank all of the Arrowverse crossovers from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies and TV way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place. Consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Arrowverse crossovers. As I went into this, I went with obviously the big crossover events, plus the more important episodes when characters from one show showed up on the other ones. One more thing before we get started. I've been posting a bunch of extra content on Instagram and Facebook. Like yesterday, I posted my quick thoughts on Crisis on Infinite Earths over on both Facebook and Instagram, and then I have a full 12-minute spoiler review over on Patreon. Just my main channel's been too busy this week. I couldn't post a video of it on here because I posted 2 videos already yesterday. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is Duet. This is an episode of The Flash where Supergirl showed up, and it was a musical, and for me, a massive disappointment. Now, I'm not usually a fan of musicals, but I actually like the novelty when a TV show decides to do a musical episode. Both of our 2 leads here used to be on Glee for at least a little bit, and so a nice, fun Glee reunion, a musical episode, and my family has been a massive fan of the episode of Batman, the Brave and the Bold with the Music Meister, the villain in this episode, the Music Meister, also an alumni from Glee, the actor that plays him inside of this, and the plot they went with just underwhelmed on every single level. And one of the songs is memorable, the Super Friends song they sing, because it's so cringy from beginning to end. But instead of doing a big Music Meister plot about the whole city, something happening like that, instead they're like in this nightclub singing songs to each other and just kind of showing off that they can sing. As an episode, it is not one I re-explore. It's not one that I enjoy. And legitimately, I usually really like musical episodes of TV shows. I was so excited to see a Flash musical episode and did not like this episode at all. Number 7, Heroes Join Forces. This one is so incredibly frustrated because the actual plot of the crossover itself about Randall Savage and Hot Girl, all of that works for me. And bringing together the legends, kind of introducing that original gang. There's some nice chemistry inside of it. When it's focused on that, I'm all on board. Nice little fun crossover. But what, without question, kills this entire crossover isn't the crossover itself. It's the subplot about William and specifically Felicity. When it's Oliver and William and the stuff about him discovering stuff, it still really works. It's kind of odd that they put it inside of this crossover, but it works. And then you have Felicity having her absolute worst moments. The stuff that killed her character and made her go from fan favorite to like the bane of the show's existence. The stuff that made the show just go off the rails in season 3, 4, 5, where there's just all this drama that just feels so fabricated. Perfect quintessential example here where Oliver is very clearly going through a big life change that's important. He just discovered it, and Felicity is freaking out on him about something that just feels so unwarranted. It's fake drama. It's like over the top melodrama that you just don't buy into, and it ruined the character. And so you're in the middle of this crossover with Randall Savage trying to kill a bunch of people, and we're stopping to have these scenes where Felicity is being the absolute worst. Totally ruins this crossover. Next up, Crisis on Infinite Earths. It breaks my heart to have to put this one so low on the list. This was supposed to be the end game of the Arrowverse, and it's much more the meh game. And most of that goes back to, on the setup side, those first 3 episodes, they put just such an emphasis on getting a quantity of cameos inside of it that they sacrificed story in the process. They had a very thin narrative for these 3 episodes, and they were just trying to see who they could get to say yes to, and wove together very loosely this narrative around all of this. And there's just so many writing problems inside that first half where you couldn't build momentum. There were a bunch of fake deaths that it just absolutely was maybe the biggest disappointment of the entire Arrowverse, as there's so many cool things they could have done, and instead it just felt like cheap scenes and sequences to be able to say, hey, look, we got Tom Welling. Hey, look, we got Kevin Conroy to show up as Batman, but they weren't actually important to what was happening. They were just these standalone little episodes inside of the episodes, and so it just killed everything that it should have been because of this strategy that they chose. I can only imagine the writers themselves were incredibly frustrated by the process itself. Then you get to the back half, the 2 episodes that aired this week, and I thought they were quite a bit better because they were story focused. Still some cameos here and there, but the cameos made more sense. They weren't over the top, and they didn't compromise the narrative that was being told in the process to just squish in all of these people from past shows. So when I put it all together, at the end of the day, I look at it and I go, I appreciated these little sequences. There's some things in this that were really cool, but it wasn't very good overall. And even the big, I guess this is a spoiler, but we knew this was going to happen before it started, so it's not really a spoiler. Even the final death of Oliver, they gave him a good death moment, but his final battle, the sacrifice moment, wasn't really set up in a way that gave you like this powerful moment. Like when Iron Man does his stuff in Endgame, it's a powerful moment, and I just don't feel like him like standing there, holding there with the anti-monitor had anything close to the same level of emotion for a character that I've invested 8 years into watching him do all of this. So, so many things about it that just disappointed me, unfortunately. I wish this could be higher up. Number 5, World's Finest. This is an episode from the first season of Supergirl, very loosely tied to what was going on in season 2 of The Flash. They found an excuse to make him do something that makes him hop into this other universe, which at the time was pretty mind-blowing because Supergirl was on CBS and The Flash was on CW, so this was a network crossover as well. What I enjoy about this one is that it's just kind of fun, unassuming crossover stuff. It doesn't have the weight of the world, the universe, or the multiverse going on here. We just get to see 2 of our heroes have a little adventure together, and that's fine. I can enjoy that about this episode. Doesn't really do anything mind-blowing. Not everything has to. Not the best, but it's just a solid crossover. Then we have Flashverse Arrow, the first of the annual crossover events that took place. But really, this one is more of a crossover than it is an event. When they show up on Arrow, it's very much an Arrow episode that still has the flashbacks and everything. And the Flash episode is very much a Flash episode. What I appreciated about this era of crossovers was that you could just feel the relationships being formed. I love origin stories, and watching people learn to get together and how they interact is kind of more interesting to me than once it's all established. So in these episodes, you see Barry and Oliver clashing quite a bit over their different tactics. When Oliver shows up on The Flash, all of the Star Labs people just think that Green Arrow is a vigilante serial killer murdering people. That's interesting to me. So seeing that early stuff is what I really enjoy about these ones. Just kind of going back to a simpler time of crossovers where there's not quite as much going on, and you really can focus in on the different worldviews of our characters as well as our supporting cast and how those clash with one another. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. If you want to throw in some of the other episodes where people showed up in different places, like when Barry Allen first showed up on Arrow, you can go ahead and do that. I just didn't want to do that for this particular one, as the video would go on forever. Also, remember, after this video, if you want to kind of check out my full review of Crisis on Infinite Earths, that second half, it is over on Patreon. You can unlock it at any level. The link is down below in the description. And if you want more Arrowverse stuff, just here on the main channel, right up here, I'll put up some links to my Flash and Arrow rankings. In third place is Invasion. There's a whole bunch of things that I really enjoy about this episode. As all of our characters come together, I just love the little banter. There's so many great lines here, especially as it's all first getting established. Supergirl shows up, and I think it was Diggle goes, I'm convinced she can join the team. Someone else looks around and goes, this is the best crossover ever. Later on in the episode, you have Barry confessing to Flashpoint, and Oliver turns to him and goes, dude, one sci-fi problem at a time. all of that is just a lot of fun. And even the fact that the Flashpoint stuff is revealed here adds an extra layer of tension inside of it. Gives it some nice emotion. There's a whole bunch of little lines here and there where like Supergirl starts flying and someone goes, I'm convinced she can join the team. So much fun stuff like that happens inside of it. Also, just seeing all of these characters on screen together is very cool. They're battling an army. Love that stuff. When you get to the third episode, you have some Men in Black elements happening here and there inside of it. So this was kind of the first one that felt like an event. And some of that leads to my frustrations with it. Like could have been number 2, maybe even number 1 competing up there. But as an event, they frustrated me. They promoted it as a 4-night event, but it's really a 3-night event. There's only teases in the first episode, the Supergirl episode, only teases. It's not really part of the event. And so it's really a 3-night event that they promoted as 4 nights. That's frustrating right off the bat. The other thing is that each of these 3 episodes is distinctly an episode of its show. The Flash episode is very Flash-centric. The Arrow episode is the 100th episode of Arrow, and so they used the event as a gimmick to do this flashback sort of thing with Arrow, and so it felt like this weird detour where you're having alien invasion, and then we're doing memories of all the previous episodes of Arrow, and then we go back to Alien Invasion in the last one, and then with the last one, because Legends of Tomorrow is this time travel show, suddenly we're time traveling and things like that inside of it, so that frustrated me. I much prefer it when these events feel like one long movie tied together as opposed to 3 shows that kind of incorporate together. And that's what knocked this one back. If they had written it as this, what would that be? 2-hour long movie spread over 3 episodes? It probably would number 2, maybe even number 1. Our runner-up, Elseworld. Now, I must confess going into this, I'm probably heavily biased on this one because I grew up with the 1990s Flash TV show. I recorded it on a VHS tape the night that the pilot aired. I recorded over my mom's copy of the movie Flashdance with the Flash pilot, and I watched that pilot movie on repeat constantly. So the fact that they actually incorporated John Wesley's ship as that Flash in a version of that costume with the music theme playing inside of it, I am exactly the person that was designed to love that moment. In fact, the only person at a Comic-Con that I've ever gotten my picture taken with was John Wesley's ship. So that novelty naturally appealed to me. I'm also someone that just kind of enjoys weird changes inside of things, and that's kind of what this was all about. That's what Elseworld is all about, showing these alternate universe versions of things. And so swapping the Flash and Arrow just creates a bunch of fun little situations. And while this one does have some pretty big stakes, it of course set up Crisis on Infinite Earths. It sets up kind of this choice that Oliver makes in regards to both the Flash and Supergirl. The way it plays out, it's a little bit more fun in nature. It's not designed to be kind of like what they did in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which like people are dying left and right in the end of the universe. This one, it's kind of a more jovial vibe inside of it. So that was kind of a nice change of pace to have a big crossover event that does have consequence to it, a little bit lighthearted. Same time, for that reason, there are things that could be disappointing inside it. It didn't have as much punch as it probably should have. I would have loved to see a lot more of John Wesley's ship and not just transport him off until our next crossover event a year later. Still, a bunch of things here that I just have fond memories for. But easily coming in first place for me is Crisis on Earth X. This to me is the best of what they can do with crossovers. It feels like a 3-hour movie spread across all these different shows. They found different reasons to bring the characters together besides just the crossover threat thing. It kicks off with a wedding. That's a different reason for people to come together while they're all here that establishes, kind of kicks us off on our little adventure that goes on throughout the course of everything. It's interesting and has consequence beyond just bringing characters together. You've got a couple of weddings inside of it. So by the end of it, 2 of our couples are married. You introduce Nora just a little bit inside of it. You have a character that actually dies off and changes kind of the course of Legends of Tomorrow because of that. And it doesn't just shrug it off. It makes a big deal of this arc between the characters throughout the episodes building up to the death and its consequences moving forward. And then, of course, you have the actual threat inside of it where we are going to this Nazi Earth and battling actual Nazis and superhero evil version of our heroes as Nazis. That's just fun to see. There's a lot of setup there that makes for the types of spectacle that they can do with this show. Even that they're fighting Nazis in warehouses is something that much more on their budget, they can make exciting. They can rent a warehouse and like blow up boxes with fire and have a bunch of martial arts fights. That looks better for them than trying to do big CGI armies. CGI armies are really expensive. Blowing up a bunch of boxes, much less expensive. And so the spectacle even looks better here than it does in the other crossovers, where it feels like they're trying to do something a little bit bigger than they actually can do. So this one to me has all of it. You have actual character moments with weddings, the Oliver Felicity, their dynamic and her reasons for not wanting to do things. You have, and all the shows too, because you have the Legend stuff going as well. Great action, great crossover, without question. For me, this was the best of the crossovers, and it comes in at number 1. If you want more Arrow rankings, you got several of them right over there. If you want my full thoughts on Crisis on Infinite Earth Part 2, you can check that out at the link down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.